So you want to buy a nuclear power plant. You want the cooling towers. You want the thing on the horizon that everybody in 3 counties can see from the highway. You want to be the man who owns a machine that turns a fingernail of uranium into enough electricity to run a city block for a year. But here's the strange part. A nuclear power plant is the cheapest reliable electricity in America. In 2024, the average American reactor produced power for $33.74 a megawatt hour, and it ran at more than 92% of full output across every hour of the year. Nothing else on the grid comes close, and it is also the only asset in this country where you can spend $6 billion, finish the building, hold a completed reactor in your hands, and never sell a single watt of electricity to anyone. By the end of this video, you'll know what a reactor actually costs at every tier, from a corpse in Michigan to the most expensive power plant ever built on Earth. You'll know the 3 costs nobody warns you about, including the invoice your own regulator sends you every year. You'll know how the money is actually made, which changed completely on one day in September 2024. You'll know why the men who build these things end up in federal prison. And you'll know why a nuclear plant isn't really a power business at all anymore. In 2022, Entergy shut down the Palisades plant in Covert Township, Michigan, 800 megawatts on the shore of Lake Michigan, running since 1971, because it could not compete with natural gas. Holtec International bought it, not to run it, to demolish it. Then the world changed. And in 2023, Holtec asked the federal government for money to turn the corpse back on. The Department of Energy finalized a loan guarantee of up to $1.52 billion in September 2024. This is the cheapest way in. It is also, as we'll see, not cheap. Tier 2, you resurrect a good one. 3 Mile Island Unit 1, the reactor next to the famous one, the one that never had an accident, was switched off in 2019 for pure economics. Constellation is spending about $1.6 billion to bring it back, which works out to roughly $1,916 per kilowatt. The Department of Energy closed a $1 billion loan on it in November 2025. It has been renamed the Crane Clean Energy Center because 3 Mile Island Unit 1 tests poorly. That is the going rate for a resurrection. Under $2,000 a kilowatt. Tier 3. You build a new one. In 2009, Georgia Power began building 2 AP1000 reactors at Plant Vogtle, budgeted at about $14 billion. Unit 3 entered service July 31, 2023. Unit 4 followed April 30, 2024. 15 years. Final cost, depending on whose accounting you accept, somewhere between $31 billion and $36.8 billion, the most expensive power plant ever built on this planet. Southern Company wrote off about $3 billion in shareholder losses. Georgia Power's 2.7 million customers now pay an additional $729 million a year. That's roughly $10,000 per kilowatt, 5 times the resurrection price. And Tier 4, the one you cannot buy at any price. A new large reactor delivered on schedule. It does not exist in the United States. Vogtle 3 and 4 are the only new-build American reactors finished in over 30 years, and no utility has ordered a large one since. You may buy a plant somebody else already paid for. You may not buy a plant that arrives on time because nobody sells one. But the building is only the start. 3 more costs nobody warns you about. First, you pay your own regulator. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission bills every operating reactor an annual fee, about $6.5 million per reactor for fiscal year 2026, capped by statute at the 2015 level adjusted for inflation. On top of that, if you ask the NRC to review anything, its professionals bill at $337 an hour. You are, in the most literal sense, paying for the privilege of being inspected. Second, you insure against other people's accidents. Every plant site must carry $500 million in primary liability insurance, raised from $450 million on January 1, 2024. The premium runs around $1 million a year for a single reactor site. That part is normal. Here's the part that isn't. Under the Price-Anderson Act, if a serious radioactive release happens at any reactor in America, every other reactor owner in the country is assessed a retrospective premium of up to $158 million. Not for your accident. For as strangers in another state at a plant you have never visited. You pay it in installments capped at about $24.7 million a year, and the whole pool comes to roughly $16 billion. Congress extended this arrangement to December 31st, 2065. Third, you shut the whole thing down on purpose. Every 18 to 24 months you stop generating, open the reactor and swap a third of the fuel. The average American refueling outage runs about 34 days. You bring in 1,000 to 2,000 contractors. Industry estimates put direct outage costs above $800,000 a day, with another $500,000 a day in lost margin. Your best planned month of the year is a $40 million hole in the ground. And before any of that, before the reactor ever starts, the NRC requires you to prove you can pay for your own demolition. The generic estimate runs $280 to $612 million. Holtec's estimate for taking apart Indian Point is $2.3 billion. The Diablo Canyon Decommissioning Trust currently holds about $2.8 billion. You are required to fund your own funeral in advance. None of these is what bankrupts nuclear owners. The thing that bankrupts them is one line item we haven't named yet, and we'll get to it. Here's the simplest version. Imagine a vending machine. It costs $30 billion and takes 15 years to install. Once it's running, it dispenses a dollar bill for 33 cents, 24 hours a day, and it almost never breaks. Every question in the nuclear business is a question about that machine. How did you finance it, and can you keep it plugged in? Now the real numbers. A 1,000 megawatt reactor at a 92% capacity factor produces about 8 million megawatt hours a year. It costs you $33.74 per megawatt hour on the fleet average. Though if you own only one plant with nobody to share overhead with, the historical figure is closer to $41. For 20 years, the problem was the other side of the ledger. Wholesale power sold in the 40s. Your costs were in the 30s. 3 Mile Island Unit 1 closed in 2019 on that arithmetic. Palisades closed in 2022 on that same arithmetic. The best engineered machines in the country were switched off because the spread was too thin. And here's the part that breaks people's brains. On September 20th, 2024, Microsoft signed a 20-year power purchase agreement for the entire output of a dead reactor in Pennsylvania. Reported terms put the price above $100 a megawatt hour. Call it roughly $16 billion over the life of the contract, against a plant producing about 7 million megawatt hours a year. Amazon's expanded deal with Talon implies something nearer $69. Wholesale is still in the 40s. A nuclear plant stopped being a power business that day and became a real estate business. You are not selling electrons. You are selling the one thing an AI data center cannot buy anywhere else. A gigawatt that is there at 3 in the morning in February forever with a signed 20-year price. As of May 2026, the hyperscalers have announced 13 such deals covering more than 9.8 gigawatts. And the counterintuitive detail, the most valuable reactors in America right now are the dead ones. When Constellation announced the 3 Mile Island restart, its stock rose 22% in a single day, adding roughly $15 billion in market value for a plant it had considered worthless enough to switch off 5 years earlier. So the model is capacity factor times contract price times 8,760 hours minus a fixed cost you cannot shrink. All the money is made in the second term. So with math this good, why does anyone lose? The short answer is that almost nobody loses money running one. They lose it building one. Pattern 1 is always construction debt. In 2008, Scana planned 2 AP1000 reactors at VC Summer in Jenkinsville, South Carolina. Construction began 2013 at an estimated $9.8 billion. Westinghouse, the lead contractor, filed for bankruptcy in March 2017. The project was abandoned that July, having never generated a watt. Scana was destroyed and swallowed by Dominion Energy in 2019. Santee Cooper, the state-owned partner with a 45% stake, was left holding roughly $4 billion in debt. 6,000 people lost their jobs. Then it got worse. Kevin Marsh had worked his way from Skarna's accounting department to chief executive. In late 2016, knowing the project was delayed and $2.2 billion in tax credits were at risk, he withheld that from regulators to keep the rate increases coming. He pleaded guilty in February 2021 and was sentenced on October 7, 2021 to 2 years in federal prison, having already forfeited $5 million. His deputy Stephen Barn got 15 months. A Westinghouse project director got 6 months of home detention. A federal prosecutor called what they left behind an $11 billion nuclear ghost town. The law? Nuclear construction is the only business in America where the cost overrun becomes a felony. Pattern 2 is the thing entirely outside your control. In 1965, the Long Island Lighting Company announced a reactor at Shoreham, New York. Original estimate, about $65 million, operating by 1973. On June 3, 1979, 10 weeks after 3 Mile Island, 15,000 people rallied outside the gates in the rain, and 571 were arrested. Construction finished anyway in the mid-1980s at a cost near $6 billion, roughly 80 times the estimate. Suffolk County refused to approve an evacuation plan. Without one, the plant could not operate. In 1989, Lilco agreed to sell it to the Long Island Power Authority for $1, and it was dismantled by 1994. Long Islanders are still paying down that debt on their electric bills into the 2030s. The law: you can finish the building and still never own a business. Pattern 3 is the restart trap, and it's happening right now. Holtec targeted October 2025 for Palisades, then early 2026, then February, then March. As of the middle of 2026, with fresh fuel sitting on site and a $1.52 billion federal loan guarantee behind it, America's first ever reactor resurrection still has no announced restart date. Along the way, cracked steam generator tubes repaired with sleeves, missing quality assurance paperwork, missing weld records, unauthorized nozzle welds at the bottom of control rod tubes. Restarting a reactor is not the same business as operating one. Nobody knew that because nobody had ever done it. And behind all 3 patterns sits the line item we skipped. Interest. Lilco said more than a third of Shoreham's total cost was interest on construction loans for a plant producing nothing. That's the number that kills you, not the concrete, not the uranium, not the regulator. The clock. Time to pull it all together and answer the actual question. How much money do you make if you do this right? Scenario 1. The resurrection. $1.6 billion. You buy a mothballed single-unit plant and restart it against a signed 20-year hyperscaler contract. 7 million megawatt-hours a year at a reported $100+. Call it $800 million in revenue. Costs around $41 a megawatt-hour, so roughly $290 million. You clear something like $500 million a year before financing. Payback, about 3 years. This is, right now, the single best trade in American energy, and there are only a handful of these plants left. Scenario 2. The new build. $31 billion. Votel's 2 units produce about 18 million megawatt-hours a year. Even at a premium contract price, that's around $2 billion in revenue and maybe $1.3 billion net. Payback, roughly 24 years, before you count 15 years of interest on money spent while producing nothing. Southern's shareholders ate $3 billion. Georgia's ratepayers are covering the rest for the next several decades. Scenario 3. The bad case. $6 billion. Shoreham completed reactor, 0 megawatt-hours, sold for $1. The difference between Scenario 1 and Scenario 3 is not technology and not competence. It's whether one county government signs one piece of paper. And the ceiling, if you survive. Constellation moved $15 billion of market value in a single afternoon by announcing that it would turn a switch back on. Everyone will tell you nuclear power is too expensive. They're wrong. Running a reactor is the cheapest thing in American energy. It's building one that costs $36 billion, 15 years, and occasionally somebody's freedom. So don't build one. Buy a dead one.